Welcome to presentation 11, where we're looking at the book of Revelation. I've entitled this, The Two Beasts. Looking backwards at where we've been, we thought of some of life's big questions, the kind of questions that we hear about today but are so rarely addressed within our Christian communities. Why so much evil? Why natural disasters? Why so much suffering? Specifically here, the followers of Jesus in those days were suffering, persecuted, threatened with martyrdom. And today the followers of Jesus throughout the world are going through the same experience. We don't see so much of it in the West, though it's beginning to happen, but it's quite normal in many parts of the world today. And questions are being asked. Why are we being threatened, impoverished, forced to flee, imprisoned, and even killed? Christian communities living quiet lives, living good lives, making a contribution to the wider community, going through that. Why is it happening today? But the address of this book is the followers of Jesus towards the end of the first century, where it was happening and it was going to grow. And part of the answer lies in beginning to understand what's going on in the spiritual realms. You see, we tend to live in the physical realms. We think within time. We think and understand things. We take decisions. We find fulfillment. That's all part of life, an important part of life. But there's a spiritual realm. It's a world of spiritual beings, beyond time, a world beyond us, a world of ultimate meaning. We're all aware of it. It's there. But when we go into that realm, we begin to get pointers to answers. And that's where John is taken in these visions. So that deals with our minds and our bodies, life itself. But this deals with human spirits, our awareness of that which is beyond ourselves. Chapter 12. The great dragon, that's Satan, the angel of evil, was hurled down. That ancient snake called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He's behind it. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. He's ejected from the heavenly realms. He doesn't have access to God, and he can't accuse the followers of Jesus. So he rampages on earth seeking to create havoc, but trying to get at the followers of Jesus. He's the ultimate agent behind the evil in the world today. But we have responsibilities. We can't just pass the buck and say, well, that was Satan's fault. We can allow Satan to create havoc, or we can triumph over him. We have two possibilities open to us as human beings. And this throws light on what's happening, the persecution that the followers of Jesus face today. Later on in the same chapter, they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb. Jesus died. By the word of their testimony, we live and speak for Jesus. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. That's the way of triumph. And it's a strange way, because it depends on two things. It depends on what Jesus achieved by his death, by the blood of the Lamb. He defeated Satan by his sacrificial death on a cross. He didn't deserve it. He went through it. But we've got to respond to it actively. And that may lead to martyrdom, may lead to persecution, may lead to suffering. We need to remember that the word for testimony there is the same word that's used for martyrdom. When we speak and live the way of Jesus, we live in a counterculture to the ways of evil society. And sometimes that society gets its terrible revenge through persecution and even martyrdom. These are the insights that John is bringing to us. You see, because of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, God entered our humanity in the life of Jesus. Suffering love. Satan doesn't understand that. He's defeated. He lost his place in the spiritual realms, where he was accusing and condemning humanity with all our failures. He's unable to defeat Jesus. Jesus won the victory on the cross. The resurrection demonstrates that. Now Satan increases his attacks on the followers of Jesus on earth. He's aiming to make us ineffective. He can't remove our status. We're followers of Jesus before God. Paul speaks of that as justification. We're acceptable to God. But he can and does seek to render us ineffective on this planet, and he uses persecution as one of his great tactics and strategies. Now we're protected and we're taken out of his ultimate reach. He can't destroy us, he can't remove us from the protection of Jesus, but he can make life thoroughly miserable. But he does it so often by using human agency. And that's where we're going in this next chapter. That's where John is being taken in these revelations, these insights into the spiritual realm. So let's move on. If we go into chapter 13, I'm just going to pick out some key verses. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea. That's Satan. Seems strange, but in those days the sea symbolized evil. So what the message is there? It's a message that communicates to the original hearers. Satan was standing facing the depth of evil, and he was going to mobilize that evil in the world. And John said, I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns, 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and each head a blasphemous name. Vivid picture, communicating things. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. And we'll see that the beast represents the deification of secular power. When secular power claims to be beyond contradiction and goes even as far as claiming divinity. Then he saw a second beast, this time coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. We'll see in a moment or two that's corrupted religion and false spiritual leadership. It can happen sadly within the Christian community, but in those days it was the wider pagan communities that were scattered all over the Roman Empire with all kinds of religious practices. And that still happens today. The 2 beasts. Rome started so well, but it got corrupted itself. Power breeds the desire for more power, and power is abused. It had a series of rulers. It's interesting, if you look at the average lifespan of an emperor, it's not very long, just a few years. It didn't last long. Assassinations and battles went on as people jockeyed for power. It could be a reference to the 7 hills of Rome, so that the hearers would identify the picture here very clearly. We can't be certain. And it claimed all power over all humanity under its control, which was the whole of the central part of the world at that time. And eventually it moved to claim divinity. very obvious with Nero. Then it went on after him. And that gives us the clue of the meaning, because that reflects back on Daniel chapter 7, where there were 4 empires pictured, and this one is Rome. So the whole thing ties together, each confirming the other. And Rome's abusive power and authority were given to it by Satan. The leadership wanted the power, and they were prepared to abuse it, and Satan gave it to them, opened the door, and gave them the power. And they abused it and destroyed lives all over the known world at that time. The second beast, that's a picture where it pretended to be good, but it acted like evil. And sadly, there's an awful lot of religion falls into that pattern. And at that time all kinds of religions were all scattered over the Roman Empire, with their temples and places of worship. They had all sorts of models and idols and things that people bowed down and worshipped. Looked harmless, but it acted like evil, because it sold itself to politics. And so added to the little pantheon of idols in these temples, there was a facsimile of the emperor of the day. And people had to come and burn a pinch of incense in front of that little idol to show their loyalty to the empire. And in the process, these religions were backing political evil and the abuse of power. The political power then claimed divine authority beyond contradiction, and the religions of the time served that corrupted political agenda. You see, you can present Rome as a great empire that brought many peaceful developments to humanity, and indeed it did. But it went corrupt, and it went increasingly corrupt, as empires always do when leadership adjusts the rules to keep themselves in power, and power is then abused for their own benefit. Became tyrannical. It imposed its will and subjugated peoples, conquering peoples around all the time. And you were either a Roman citizen or you were a slave. And being a slave meant you had no rights at all. You could be worked to death. Now it had begun to persecute the followers of Jesus. They were rapidly growing in numbers across the empire, an amazing exponential growth. And it became very obvious under Emperor Nero, but it went on after him. And they started to claim divinity for themselves. They're above contradiction. They demanded worship, and the religious establishment went along with it, all except the followers of Jesus. So Rome was moving towards the increased persecution, and that meant martyrdom, and that was a real threat that was held over the followers of Jesus. Conform, give in, or you've had it, and this is what's going to happen to you. Now, if you look at the history of the world, this pattern has repeated itself again and again and again. And although the media, for some reason, fail to report it, the media outlets that provide the information show that Christians are being tortured and executed at a greater rate today than at any time in human history. Happening in many places of the world today. There are others who are not Christian, they're simply caught up in the events, and they're suffering as well. And they're all suffering because they don't fit the regime of thought of the day. And sometimes that regime of thought is very, very evil. Happening now. And it's happened repeatedly down through the history of the world. Now let's look at the passage kind of overall. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea. I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns, 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. They also worshipped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?" You couldn't win against Rome. Now, in AD 69, there was a major upheaval in the leadership in Rome. 4 emperors came one after the other. A fair amount of assassination and political manoeuvring went on. Eventually, Vespasian took control. Now, he'd been the army commander who was waging war and decimating the land of Israel, the land of Judah at that time. And that's the break when he was recalled to Rome to become emperor that gave the Christians a chance in Jerusalem to escape. Jesus predicted that and gave them the advice to do it. You'll find that in Matthew 24, for example. Vespasian's son became the army commander in his place and finished off Jerusalem and the temple. Now, the whole leadership seemed to be up for grabs. It was in chaos. Now, can the leadership survive? Can the empire survive when the leadership's in such chaos and there's such jockeying for power, including assassinations? Looked like it was fatal, but no. Satan protected it. The fatal wound had been healed. And Vespasian took control. And people were filled with wonder and followed this. The Roman Empire went on. The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. It was given authority over every tribe, people, language and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. 42 months was going to be a reasonable length of time, but it was going to be limited. It wouldn't go on forever, and the Roman Empire didn't. Satan gave the power, and the Roman authorities waged war against the followers of Jesus. Authority given to kill Christians and to impose worship of himself. It was applied very erratically across the empire, but the authority was there. In these circumstances, the followers of Jesus, to whom John was writing, what are they going to do? That's what's lying ahead. We've already experienced a bit of it, but it's going to get worse. Is there any way we can fight back? And the revelation goes on, whoever has ears, let them hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. That just simply means pay attention. And perhaps that is driving home the point. Suffering and death are inevitable, and physical violence to defend oneself is pointless. We find that difficult to take as human beings, but it's just the way it was going to happen. And it goes back to that key phrase, patient endurance and faithfulness. Hang on in there, whatever it's going to be thrown at you. There are greater rewards than giving in. Now we can stop and think about this for a moment. Jesus is our example. If anyone did not deserve to be crucified, it was Jesus. He knew it was going to happen to him. He warned his followers. He didn't fight back. He wouldn't let his followers fight back. He wouldn't let them resist. He allowed himself to be captured, flogged, a punishment that's so violent that it can kill a man, and then hung on a cross. Hours of torture, public, stripped naked. Utter humiliation. He did that. That's our example. And by doing that, he broke the power of Satan. The rewards are greater than going through with it. He is our example. And I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on the behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. Religion does. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship him to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast, or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man. That number is 666. The local leaders, political and the religious leaders, imposed emperor worship. That happened. Little images of the emperor that were housed in temples all over the empire. Now, in the literature there are many reports of these images speaking at that time. Now, some of them may be utterly made up. Some of them may be satanic counterfeits. We don't know. But refusal to bow down, it brought the prospect of a death penalty. But that bit has been the happy hunting ground of wild speculation. So let's look at it a bit further. Number of the beast. Which beast? Now, looking at it in the overall context, it seems to be the beast of the emperor of the ruler of Rome. The phrase there, number of a man, the word is not, the word for man is the word that's used for humanity. So it could be translated humanity's number. It's not the word of a man as a human being specifically, or a male. Here's a possible way of looking at it. Could it simply be the number of the beast reminds the world that the emperors were human, not divine? They were just part of humanity. And such rulers can be agents of Satan. Now, we have to recognize that there is no agreement on the meaning of that number, although some people have stated that they know the meaning with utter dogmatism. But there is no agreement. What we do know is that they had no numbering system at that time. was invented in India much later and didn't reach the Middle East and the West for many, many centuries. So letters were used to stand for numbers, and therefore you take the letters of anyone's name, it had a numerical value if you then used the letters as what they stood for numbers. It would have been understood by the original hearers, but for us today it's best to keep it broad, and perhaps to see it as the representative of the emperors who claimed divinity. And perhaps today, any leader, human leader, who claims divinity, either overtly or implicitly, they fit the pattern. Now there are some who claim divinity virtually openly, but there are many who claim divinity by saying or implying that they are beyond contradiction. They always have things right. They know all the answers. They can solve all the problems. And there's a few of them around today. They're just human beings with all their failings, frailties, strengths and weaknesses. Satan's a powerful angel, but he works through human agency, people or systems, and that's his goal. He can't destroy Jesus, and he can't actually destroy the followers of Jesus, but he can make our lives intolerable and ineffective. And here it's pictured as working through the beast from the sea and the beast from the land, irresponsible political power or irresponsible religious power. Now let's define irresponsible. When it's irresponsible, it's employing the power for personal gain. Property, possessions, reputation, status, personal gain. That's irresponsible. Plenty of that in the world today. Satan gives the power to the political leadership. Religious systems and people, they persuade people to benefits of states, to worship the state, and they get the kickback. Happened then, it's happening today. And by following it, they're basically worshipping Satan. They're going the way of evil. And there are many today who have looked at that picture and seen it as a kind of unholy trinity. We've got the Holy Trinity of Father, Son and Holy Spirit that explains so much about God. Here we have Satan copying it with an unholy trinity, and his way of getting at and undermining the people of God. It's a dangerous heady mix when religion endorses political power. And we can see that today in the world, not only in totalitarian regimes, but in certain Western nations. And not only non-Christian religions, but strands of the Christian community serving Satan. The unholy trinity, politics. He works through politics when politics is abused. Let's remember that many enter politics from the highest of motives, to serve the people. It's the irresponsible use of power in politics and religion that's a problem. Copies divinity. Copies Jesus. That was what was happening then and was going to happen increasingly, and it's a repeated pattern that we can see in the world. Our two beasts, the deification of secular power and corrupted religion and false spiritual leadership. The Roman Empire then, characterized by vicious authority. And the religions, very diverse at that time of the Roman Empire. And essentially, it was enforcing the worship of the state system by all their temples having little facsimiles of the emperor, little idols, and people had to worship before them. And when they did it, they got their certificate. Now, they didn't get a piece of paper then, it would be some mark on the human body, the mark of the beast. John is shown, and he now could see, the satanic element which lay behind the deification of secular power in the Roman Empire. But he could also see the satanic element which lay behind religion that was interested in power and influence, irrespective of what that religion might be. Not a good picture. That was what was happening. And it stood against God, God's reputation, his hail angels, and the faithful followers of Jesus, because it saw the followers of Jesus as threats to the power of the empire. They were totally wrong in seeing that. They were no threat. They brought nothing but good. And that was what was happening and going to happen. And resisting was pointless. Again, a comparison. Imperial Rome enforced its will by brutality, shedding the blood of all who resisted. Jesus exercises his rightful sovereignty by shedding his own blood. Suffering love. What a dramatic comparison. This has happened down through history. You can see it in communism. You can see it in the secular powers abusing religion today. You can see it in Islam when it becomes a religious political system. You can see it in dictatorships, often claiming to be elected, but they fiddle the system to be elected. You can see it in the way Christendom developed and the legacy it's left behind in Europe. You can see it in the modern sexual agendas where you've got to conform or you're had it. You can see it in the identity cards of Islamic states, where if you don't have Muslim on your card, social progress is hindered. Overall, it's an unwillingness to conform means you get harassed and inability to progress in society, and that can be seen now in the West, beginning to grow. You see, when the political works with religion, they're both taking an advantage, playing off each other, and they're both after power and influence. That's the danger. And let's remember what Jesus said to the political leader that he met, Pilate. My kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is from another place. It's not political, and it's no threat to the political kingdoms of the world. You can never take the way of Jesus and harness it to secular political power. It's happened historically, and indeed, in some parts of the West today, it's happening today. It will lead to disaster, as this revelation shows. But the real question is, the followers of Jesus in this mess, is it worth it all? Can we keep going?